At least three of the biggest coffee chains in America are slowly turning the morning cup into a health trap. You think coffee from the big names is safe? What if I told you that what you are drinking is nothing more than a blend of low-quality beans, excess sugar, chemical flavorings, and clever marketing tricks? Americans think they are buying coffee, but in reality, they are paying for a cheap formula dressed up in branding. The consequences go far beyond taste. We are talking about diabetes, obesity, and neurological damage. The big chains know this, but why should they care when you are the one putting your trust in them? This is the harsh truth of a declining America, where even the morning cup has turned its back on the people. In this report, we will point out 3 coffee chains you should avoid at all costs, and more importantly, the 2 rare places that are still safe enough to trust. Number 1. McCafe. Topping the list is a name that might surprise you. McDonald's is not just about hamburgers and fries. In fact, this chain is one of the largest coffee distributors in the United States. The numbers are staggering. Every year, McDonald's sells hundreds of millions of cups of coffee, which means hundreds of millions of American mornings begin with McCafe. With its low price and convenience, many see it as a safe choice. But look closer, and the reality is the exact opposite. McCafe coffee relies heavily on Robusta beans, which are cheap, high-yield, and low in flavor. To cover up those natural flaws, the beans are roasted at extremely high temperatures, creating the harsh bitterness many mistake for being bold. But at those same temperatures, something dangerous is produced: acrylamide. International health agencies have warned that this compound can harm the nervous system and increase cancer risk. Research from FDA shows that acrylamide forms in foods processed at high heat, with dark roasted coffee being among the most concerning. One comparative report revealed that while many premium coffee brands keep acrylamide levels below 150 parts per billion, overly roasted samples, including many batches of McCafe, can exceed 400 parts per billion. This is no small matter because acrylamide does not disappear when you brew the coffee. It goes straight into your body day after day. The simple question is, why does McDonald's choose cheap Robusta beans and roast them to a burn instead of maintaining quality? The answer is profit. At such a massive scale, saving just a few cents per cup adds up to hundreds of millions of dollars each year. Consumers think they are saving money by buying a cheap cup of coffee, but the real cost is paid with their long-term health. Consider this. A McCafe cup priced at $1 or $2 looks like a bargain compared to premium brands. But once you know that it can contain 2 or 3 times the acrylamide levels that experts recommend keeping as low as possible, is it really a deal? You might think one cup is harmless. The problem is accumulation. Millions of Americans repeat this habit every morning, letting acrylamide build up in their bodies bit by bit, year after year. This is not just a personal risk. It shows something bigger and more troubling. Even giant corporations are willing to sacrifice public health in order to keep prices low and profits high. McCafe is a textbook example of how an everyday habit gets turned into a tool for exploitation, not to serve customers, but to squeeze wallets while ignoring the medical consequences. The final question is this: is a cheap cup of McDonald's coffee really worth it if the hidden price is a slow buildup in your body that could lead to disease later on? Americans have grown so used to seeing the McDonald's logo that they automatically equate it with convenience. But how convenient is it really when what you're bringing home is no longer genuine coffee, but a profit-driven formula carrying health risks? Number 2. Starbucks. Take a look at a number that should shock anyone. A grande vanilla frappuccino at Starbucks contains 68 grams of sugar. That is almost 3 times the daily limit recommended by the American Heart Association for women, and nearly twice the recommended amount for men. To put it plainly, one frappuccino delivers the same sugar as 2 Snickers bars or 16 sugar cubes. And the irony is that this drink is not marketed as a dessert. It is sold under a much sweeter, more innocent name, coffee. That is the core of the issue. Starbucks is not really selling coffee. They are selling desserts disguised as coffee. Drinks loaded with milk cream syrup, caramel drizzle, and toppings, all labeled as coffee. That definition convinces millions of Americans that they are enjoying a healthy ritual to start their day. In reality, they are starting the morning with a sugar addiction. The mechanism is clear. When that huge sugar load hits your body, your blood sugar spikes and you feel energized and alert, but it is only a temporary illusion. Within 60 to 90 minutes, your blood sugar crashes, leaving you tired, sluggish, and unfocused. This is known as the sugar crash. And here is the trap: when the crash hits, your body craves more sugar, pushing you back to Starbucks for another drink. The cycle of dependence keeps going day after day, week after week, month after month. The long-term consequences are impossible to ignore. According to CDC, more than 37 million Americans are living with type 2 diabetes. Over 40% of the population is obese, and health experts have pointed out that a significant share of these cases are linked directly to high-sugar diets, including the so-called coffee drinks at Starbucks. What looks like a harmless cup of coffee is actually a sugar bomb fueling America's public health crisis. But Starbucks is not just selling a product. They have built an entire illusion around it. You step inside, there is warm lighting, indie music playing, the barista writes your name on the cup, often misspelled, and you feel like you are someone special. In your hand is a white cup with the green siren logo, and suddenly you believe you are holding more than a drink. You are holding a lifestyle. Starbucks calls it self-care, a treat for yourself. In reality, it is a carefully designed trap. Ask yourself this: why is a drink with 68 grams of sugar allowed to be called coffee when the actual coffee inside is just a tiny shot of espresso buried under layers of milk syrup and cream? The answer is marketing. They know Americans need an excuse to consume sugar without guilt. So instead of calling it a milkshake or a dessert, they call it coffee. And with that simple trick, millions feel justified buying it, drinking it, and posting it online. If you think this is just about personal choice, look at the scale. Sugary drinks make up about 70% of Starbucks' US revenue. That means most of their profits do not come from pure coffee, but from sweetened products disguised as coffee. Behind every sleek cup lies a contradictory cycle of consumption. Americans are paying for something labeled coffee, but getting obesity, diabetes, and sugar dependency in return. This is not about blaming those who pick up a Starbucks cup each morning. It is about exposing the sleight of hand. You think you are drinking coffee for alertness, but what you are actually doing is feeding a habit that makes your body more tired and weaker over time. Starbucks has turned that habit into a multi-billion-dollar industry. So here is the final question. Is the Starbucks drink really self-care as their ads suggest? Or is it just a way of making Americans comfortable with drinking dozens of extra grams of sugar every single day? That so-called little reward after work, after a stressful day. Is it worth the lifelong risk of chronic disease? The answer, when you look at the numbers and the reality, could not be clearer. Starbucks has turned coffee into a disguised dessert, and Americans are paying the price with their health. Number 3, Dunkin. Chances are many people have gone through this exact situation. One day you stop by a Dunkin in the city, grab a hot coffee that tastes smooth and satisfying, and walk away pretty pleased. But a few weeks later, you step into another Dunkin out in the suburbs, order the same drink, take one sip, and it tastes like watered-down brown liquid with a harsh, bitter aftertaste. Same brand, same logo, yet the quality is shockingly inconsistent. And this is not just a one-off. Countless American consumers have complained about the same thing online. One Dunkin feels decent, another tastes so bad it is barely drinkable. This inconsistency leaves people puzzled. A national brand should deliver the same experience everywhere. Whether in New York or Texas, the flavor should be familiar. But Dunkin has become a gamble. If you're lucky, you get a cup that tastes fine. If not, you are left with bitter, watered-down sludge. The reason has nothing to do with the customer. It is built into the business model. Dunkin runs on franchising. That means thousands of stores across America are run by different owners. And when profit is the top priority, quality standards become optional. In a franchise system, Dunkin can issue guidelines, but how they are followed depends on each owner. One franchisee might use real whole milk. Another might cut corners with cheaper substitutes to save money. Some invest in quality machines and staff training, while others slash costs to the bone. The result is that Dunkin' coffee is not a unified product, but a patchwork of choices in ingredients and methods. Of course, customers are never told this. Look closer at the cup itself. Many customers have noticed Dunkin' coffee tasting so watered down, it is basically tinted water with a faint bitterness. Instead of the full body of brewed coffee, you are left with a flat, dull flavor. To cover it up, plenty of stores lean on industrial flavor syrups. Bottles of artificial vanilla caramel or hazelnut. When the beans fall short, syrup steps in to trick your taste buds. The catch is those syrups are packed with sugar and chemicals, turning what should be a simple coffee into an unhealthy sweetened drink. Milk is another issue. Some shops use good quality milk that creates a smooth foam. Others cut costs with cheap additive-heavy milk that leaves your latte or cappuccino heavy off tasting and unpleasant. Customers never really know why the same brand can taste so different from place to place. For Americans, Dunkin once stood as a symbol of convenience and affordability. "America runs on Dunkin" was a slogan everyone knew. But today it feels more accurate to say America is confused by Dunkin. The trust and consistency is gone. And when a brand cannot guarantee uniform quality, what does that brand even stand for anymore? Think about it. You are really paying for a logo, not for a reliable coffee experience. Every time you walk into a Dunkin, you have no idea what you will get. It might be a decent cup, or it might be weak coffee drowned in syrup. That is the hidden trade-off American consumers are making. Same brand, but wildly different quality depending on luck. This does more than just erode trust. It feels unfair. Loyal customers put faith in Dunkin, a name that has been around for decades. In return, they often get a random, sometimes terrible experience that betrays that trust. In a time of rising food costs and financial stress, paying for an inconsistent product feels like being taken for granted. And in the end, the biggest question remains. If the same logo delivers a different product at every location, what are you really paying for? The taste of real coffee, or just the illusion of a brand that has lost its soul? After seeing how 3 giant chains have turned the morning cup into a health risk, the question is, are there still places in America where you can trust that what you are drinking is real coffee? The good news is, yes there are. Number 1, Dutch Bros. Coffee. Few would guess that one of the fastest growing coffee chains in America today started from a tiny pushcart in Oregon back in 1992. 2 brothers, the Boersmas, who came from a family of dairy farmers, decided to leave behind their traditional work and try coffee instead. They set up a small cart on the side of the road serving just a handful of basic drinks to locals. Nobody could have imagined that from such a modest beginning, Dutch Bros would grow into a brand with hundreds of stores and thousands of employees across the nation. It is the kind of story that surprises people, because in an era dominated by big chains, a small name managed to rise and compete. What allowed Dutch Bros to thrive is transparency. Unlike Starbucks, which keeps turning coffee into syrup-soaked desserts, Dutch Bros focuses on pure Arabica beans. They roast on site, closely control every batch, and refuse to hide flaws with artificial flavorings. When you walk into a Dutch Bros, the menu is simple and straightforward. The cup of coffee you get is consistent, not a gamble like Dunkin', and not a sugar experiment like Starbucks. For American consumers tired of slick marketing tricks, Dutch Bros offers something refreshing. There are no glowing lights to distract from the truth. No gimmicks like writing your name wrong on a cup to feel friendly. What you get is simply real coffee with the aroma of carefully roasted beans and a balanced, satisfying flavor. That sense of reliability is exactly what the big 3 have lost. Put it this way, Starbucks has turned coffee into a lifestyle, but at the cost of public health. Dunkin' has turned its logo into a gamble with unpredictable quality. McCafe cuts corners with cheap beans and exposes customers to acrylamide risks. Dutch Bros, on the other hand, stays true to the essence. They focus on real flavor and consistency. There are no games, just honesty in every cup. That is why Dutch Bros has earned the trust of young people, office workers, and middle-aged Americans alike. Not because they are the cheapest, not because they are a luxury brand, but because they deliver what Americans want most right now, a safe choice in an age of broken trust in big chains. When scandals, recalls, artificial additives, and soaring prices dominate the industry, a brand that stays transparent and consistent feels like a rare source of hope. Looking at Dutch Bros teaches an important lesson. Growth does not always mean corruption. Some brands can start small, grow big, and still keep their soul intact. In a country drowning in food industry crises, Dutch Bros proves that consumers still have places they can rely on, still have somewhere to start the morning with a real cup of coffee. That journey from a cart in Oregon to hundreds of stores nationwide is more than a business success. It is proof of a deeper longing to reclaim truth in the coffee cup, something many Americans thought was lost forever to profit schemes. And at Dutch Bros, people are finding hope again, realizing that real coffee still exists, and some places still serve it the way it was meant to be. Number 2, local coffee shops. If you have ever walked the streets of Seattle, Portland, or New York, you will notice the little coffee shops tucked into corners just big enough for a few tables and chairs. There is no flashy logo, no endless menu of strange creations, just a warm, familiar vibe that feels completely different from the cold, industrial atmosphere of the big chains. Step inside and you will see beans roasted right there, the smell filling the small space while the barista is ready to explain where each bean comes from. It makes you wonder, how do these small shops manage to keep the honesty that the big chains have lost? The answer lies in their size. Independent roasters are not pressured to sell millions of cups a day, nor are they forced to cut corners on ingredients to squeeze out profit. They choose clean, traceable beans, often from small farms in Latin America or Africa, where farmers grow and harvest by hand. Roasting is carefully done, not for a massive assembly line, but to bring out the best in each small batch. Less industrialization means each cup gets more care, more authenticity. That is, the peace of mind customers can taste. Compared to Starbucks or Dunkin, the difference is clear. At the big chains, you get something consistent but soulless, often cheap beans masked with syrup and flavoring. At a local shop, every cappuccino or Americano carries its own character, unique enough to stand out, yet always upholding quality. You're not just tasting coffee, you're tasting transparency, knowing where the beans came from, how they were roasted, and why they taste the way they do. This advantage has become priceless in a country drowning in food scandals and corporate cover-ups. As consumers lose faith in brands that were once trusted, small shops have become a safe haven. There is no self-care marketing trick, no sweet coating hiding industrial syrup. Instead, you know exactly what you are drinking: real beans, real roasting, real flavor. Over time, that sense of familiarity turns into trust. You come back not just for the good coffee, but for the consistency and honesty. You know that here nobody is fooling you with a giant logo or fancy slogans. Every cup has real value, unlike the mass-produced versions built only for profit. In an America where trust in big brands keeps collapsing, independent roasters remind us that safe, worthwhile options still exist. Those little shops in Seattle, Portland, and New York are not just preserving the soul of coffee, they are keeping alive a small but important sense of trust for consumers. And that makes them one of the few places where you can still place your full confidence in a morning cup. Looking at the big picture, one truth is undeniable: a big brand does not equal safety. McCafe cuts costs with over-roasted cheap beans. Starbucks turns coffee into sugar bombs. Dunkin delivers hit or miss quality like a coin toss. Together, these three have shown how the familiar American morning is being reshaped. But that does not mean all doors are closed. Dutch Bros is still holding on to transparency and consistency, and local roasters continue to stay loyal to clean beans and real flavor. The morning coffee ritual should not become a burden on health or the wallet. It can still be a reliable comfort as long as you stay alert and choose wisely. Share your own experiences with these 5 names in the comments so others can avoid the same traps. A real cup of coffee still exists, and it is worth protecting.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.